What's up, coaches? Coach Chamberlain here. This would be the beginning of our Back to the Basics series. Let me tell you how this is going to work. I'm going to ask my wife, what's something you don't understand about football? And then I'm going to come out here and we're going to make a video about it. Because my wife lives with a football coach. She watches football. She goes to football games. And so I would think that she would have the knowledge of most people who are interested in coaching football. Okay. Now, is it always going to be perfect? No. Is there going to be some things that she doesn't know that you do? Yes. She also probably knows some stuff that you don't know. So that's going to be the fun part. So this Back to the Basics series really built for those coaches coming out of high school that think they want to coach. Okay, maybe they want to get a head start before their 4-year degree is complete and they're going back. I've even seen quite a few high school players that jump right back in with their high school team, right? Like as they look for a job, whatever, they end up being volunteer coaches. Generally smaller schools, not always. Or maybe you first, second year coaches that are still kind of learning everything. Preface everything in the series with this the way that I see things. Okay, so you're going to see things differently. Today we're going to talk about position names, like what are positions, and we're going to talk a little bit about personnel groupings. Okay, so obviously I'm not going to call every position group the same thing that you do. That it wouldn't make sense. We all have different lingos. We all do things differently. Okay, so that's where we're going to get started. So today we're going to talk positions. And we're going to talk personnel groupings, understanding how we put those positions in. Okay, let's get into it here. All right. First of all, formation-wise, we can name them literally anything we want. Okay, so look at there. Double sounds great. We're going to talk about doubles. So position group, we'll start on the outside and move in. Wide receivers. What are wide receivers? These are those super athletic kids. Generally, going to be like taller, lankier. Not always. Some are short. There's lots of famous, very short wide receivers. But these are the guys that are going to be catching footballs, whether it be coming out of the backfield, moving through the backfield, jet sweeps and such. And then, anytime they're running a pass route, these are your primary wide receiver type people. Pass catchers, okay? In some offenses, they block a lot, so that makes it kind of difficult to explain because we all do different things with our wide receivers. But that's who they pretty much are, okay? So in terminology, you're going to see that I'm going to call them X and Z are my primary outside receivers. H is a name that we use for H-backs. We're just going to bump them out a lot of times because I'm a small school coach for the most part, and so that's going to be the same kid. You might see this to be a strong and weak. So strong inside wide receiver, weak inside wide receivers. People name them different things. A-back, B-back from way back in the day, right? So if you're a flexbone guy that's just moving kids out, your letters and terminology stayed the same, then it may be A and B. Instead of being backs, now they're wide receivers. So those are your wide receiver types, okay? Generally, your faster, more athletic kids, your athletes, okay? Running backs or tailbacks or halfbacks, split backs. Man, what else have we heard them called? Lots of things out there, right? A lot of people call them different things. Back in the day, they were called halfbacks because you would have two of them in the wishbone, right? Don't want to get too much into formations, but if you got back into the old school wishbone, which is what I grew up in with Coach Bob Craig and those Beggs Demons, shout out to him, Jeremy Nathan, all the guys back in the day. Then, you would have halfbacks, and then a fullback was the blocking type, okay? We've kind of modernized, most people have, where we have different names for them now. But your tailback is usually still something like tailback. He may be marked with an F. I've seen T's, B's, A's, R's for running back. All those are kind of the same kid that's standing back there ready to run the ball. He might be over to the side, one side or the other, in more of a shotgun look. If he's back behind, we call that a pistol look. Okay. Lots of different schemes and options out there. So don't want to get too caught up in that today either. Then we can talk about the kind of the modern day fullback. we call the H-back. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to mean halfback. Somebody at some point moved their extra guy down there and said, hey, looky there. And now he's an H-back, okay? H-back's usually a hybridized tight end / running back, where used to you had wide receivers, tight ends, fullbacks, tailbacks. Now you've got all these hybridized positions. Okay, so sometimes I have a really stout wide receiver who can come in and play H-back for me. Sometimes I have a tight end, but he can run better routes, or he's more mobile than most tight ends. So we bump those back to H-back. In a lot of our schemes, they're going to be blockers. They can still catch a pass time to time. Okay, once again, generally marked with an H. Depends on what offense you're in. You mark them with other letters. Okay, we talk about a true tight end. These are going to be Y. A lot of people call them a Y. And the second one, for whatever reason, gets a U. Now, I've heard this is kind of a West Coast offense thing. Second tight end being called a U. I don't know. Once again, who knows where all this stuff came from? My coaching tree is everything from a local legend in Bill Blankenship down to a first year. Well, now I've been through with 3 first-year head coaches in my 5 years coaching. So, lots of different trees, lots of different coaching trees that I've kind of been connected with. Okay, so I'm gonna sit here and make my formations correct. So tight ends are generally bigger bodies. They're more like in some systems your 6th or 7th offensive lineman, but have a little bit of hands, can be a little bit more agile. Some people don't use them like that at all. Some people, that is just the 6th offensive lineman, and that's all he's there for, is to block. We're not going to throw him the ball. We're not going to hand the ball off to him. Lots of different ways to use these guys. So that's your tight ends, okay? In football, you have to have 5 ineligible numbers on the line of scrimmage. You have to have 7 total players on the line of scrimmage. That's kind of the rules, and so that's where we start identifying, well, who's a tight end, who's not. Generally, it's location. Okay, so you're going to have 5 offensive linemen that are all shoulder to shoulder. People these days are doing crazy stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. Your tight ends are generally tight to the formation and on the end of the formation. There you go, right? I don't know if that's where the name tight end came from, but it's one that makes sense. It's a common sense name. Okay, once again, it could be more of an H-back style and be off. A lot of times these are the same kid. Tight ends are there to add to the surface, or how many players are on that side of the football, and then they're there to block. It could be zone blocking, be gap scheme. We don't want to get too heavy into all that either. So that's what those positions are. So if you're sitting at the local OU game, or whatever your local college is, or maybe at a high school game on a Friday night, and your husband doesn't coach, or your wife isn't into sports, or whatever, maybe you're new to this and you're trying to, I said husband because I'm obviously talking to my wife or other wives. If you're new and you're just trying to help identify formations, these 2 guys would most likely have on an eligible number, meaning 0 through 49 or 80 through 99. Those are all eligible numbers. Okay. Those middle numbers, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, are all ineligible numbers. They cannot go out for a pass. And so these big bodies in the middle are always going to wear those numbers. 50s, 60s, 70s. Hopefully I said that correct. I think I did. In today's offenses, you have to be worried about things like this, where we start moving offensive linemen into weird places. There's some of them where they'll be way out here and can't move the center there. There's special formations that do this kind of crazy stuff. So obviously you need to really pay attention to what you're looking at, because it can get rather confusing. But in general, you're going to have 5 offensive linemen that are all standing next to each other and right next to the football. Yeah, so that covers all of the positions, I think. We talked O-linemen. We'll talk about individuals. So the guy that's snapping the ball is called the center. Assuming because he was always the center lineman of the 5. I don't know that for sure. Once again, just the common sense approach to where did these names come from. Guards and tackles, truly, I don't know. Maybe some rugby stuff. But the guards are going to be the first guy outside the center, and then the tackles are going to be the outside guys when you're in a base 5-man offensive front there. So that kind of covers all of those. Quarterback, of course, the guy that's going to be catching and throwing the ball most of the time. Once again, football's weird. This can be a wide receiver. It can be a tailback. It can be an H-back. All sorts of people can catch the snap. But on most plays, it starts through the quarterback so that he can throw a pass to someone else or hand the ball off. All right, let's talk personnel groups for a minute. When we get into personnel groups, I'm going to do all this right here in Huddle. It's going to be wonderful, hopefully. We name them based on how many tight ends and running backs there are, okay? So that means that everybody else has to be a wide receiver, okay? So we're only counting skill positions. We're not counting linemen. So the linemen are, like I said earlier, you have to have 5 ineligible numbers. They have to be on the line of scrimmage. So everything else is just going to be some variation of counting to 5, basically, because it's going to be all those wide receivers and such. Let's see here. We can have 20. Whoops. You'll notice that I'm not using as many numbers each time. Obviously, if you because you have to be counting to 5. Okay. And it can get pretty crazy. And I keep trying to even use too many because it just seems like habitual there. I don't know who would use 40 personnel or 41 personnel. That would get pretty crazy. And then, of course, I guess the largest one would be 50 personnel. All right, so like I said, these are in a certain order where the first number, see if I can do something here. Yeah, look at that. The first number is going to be running backs. So how many running backs are in the game? The second number is going to be tight ends or tight end types, okay? And so this can, many people will disagree even on what these mean, okay? But generally, running backs in the backfield or tight ends down on the line of scrimmage with the O-line. So if I'm in 10 personnel, which is what I have shown here, there's one running back. He's here, okay? And then there are no tight ends. Notice it's just those 5 linemen. So that tells us that everyone else is a wide receiver. Okay, 10 personnel can be, this would be like a doubles or a deuce or what generally people call it doubles, but it's got a lot of names. Okay, twins could be called twins to both sides. It could be trips, so 3 to one side, 1 away. It can be quad, so all 4 of them can be on one side and nobody away. Okay, the rules that govern football just say that 7 total people have to be on the line of scrimmage. And then there's some eligibility issues, but we're not going to get into that too much today, okay? But what you need to know is personnel-wise, if you hear 10 personnel, it's generally going to be 2x2, 3x1 game. That's where a lot of people play at when they're in their 10 personnel, okay? This is really kind of as the air raid took over, spread offense, as you'll hear it called. A lot of people spread to run, so it doesn't mean they're pass heavy. It just means they want to spread things out a little bit. Okay, so that's 10 personnel. If you have 0 personnel, okay, well, that just means there's not a running back. So he's going to be, whoever that player is, just going to be out as a wide receiver. Once again, it's just the number can only equal 5 because there's only 5 eligible players on the field at any given time. And so the numbers can only equal 5, and it's going to be running backs, then tight ends, and the unspoken for are all going to be wide receivers. Okay, so let's just say I want to go 23 personnel. Okay, that tells us we're going to have 2 running backs. Okay, so in this case, who knows what they're going to be called? Maybe a T and an H. And then everyone else is going to be tight ends. This can look like about a million things, okay? Once again, we just have to have 7 people on the line of scrimmage, and then other people can be wherever they want. These guys on the second row are what can kind of get you confused if you aren't speaking to the rest of the coaches on staff, because I call this a tight end. So an H-back to me is a tight end. He's there to block most of the time. He's not going to get a handoff most of the time. You get into the Kenny Simpson offenses of the world, you might have issues. But for the most part, these cats are going to be tight ends in my lingo. Some people say, well, he's off the line of scrimmage, so now he's a running back. Okay, so they might call this 32 personnel. But for my video, we're going to call him a tight end. So notice I have 2 backs, so that's the 2. I have 3 tight ends, so that's the 3. We're in 23 personnel. You can make pretty much anything out of this. 14, 1 running back, 4 tight ends. Okay, so it might look something like this. By the way, the quarterback can be under center. I know that we don't go under center a lot anymore. Some people don't. So you can have all sorts of formations like this. Okay, be in the pistol, be in the gun. Identifier here is there's 1 running back and 4 tight ends. Okay, you can have 31 personnel. All right, so now we've got something like, I'll run the Z out here and pretend he's an X for now. Okay, you could have something like this. I have 3 running backs. I have 1 tight end. The extra guy has to be a receiver. So I'm going to try to count to 5. Whatever difference is in my total and 5 is how many wide receivers are on the field. So if your coach tells you, hey, I want to be in 11 personnel, and look, I'm going to bring Z back into the fold. Welcome back, Z. He says, I want to be 11 personnel, and I want to run counter, right? Well, 11 personnel a lot of the times is going to be either a tight end or an H-back, and this is why H-backs are tight ends to me, because I'm not calling this 20 personnel. This is 20 personnel. 2 running backs, no tight ends. It's different for the defense, okay? When I have to start thinking about widening a defensive end for the defense, I'm considering that a tight end. So now this is 11 personnel. So you may hear people say 10 or 11P. The P just is shortened for personnel. So here now we are going to be in 11P. This is kind of like where I live. I live in 11P, 12P, stuff like that, okay? Once again, we talked about it doesn't matter where these people are located on the ball, off the ball, just more of like, are they connected to the line of scrimmage or not? So now we're in 12P, okay? Once again, if you're a Kenny Simpson fan now, this is kind of what he's running. Once again, he's going to be, I think, A back, B back. I don't know I think this is an F to him. There's lots of stories on where all that came from, and maybe we'll do history lessons someday. History lessons with Coach Chambo. But for today, we're not going to. So this right here would be 12 personnel, okay? All right, so there's your personnel packages. There's your position groups. I hope that some of that was helpful. If you have any questions on any of that, if you're a new guy, please do reach out, okay? Chamberlain Football Consulting at gmail.com. I do have a Patreon. If you're looking to get way better at football really fast, jump over to the Patreon and sign up there. There's a tier for you, whatever you want to learn. Look, even if you want to start making graphics for your team, you need some help on Photoshop. If you need Canva help, you want to build up a playbook, a resume. Okay, I've kind of got help for people doing anything over there right now. So it's off season. It's time to be a better coach. Get better at your craft. And I'm a guy that can help you get there. So appreciate your time. Kept it under 20 minutes. That was kind of my target today. If you have any more questions about position groups, if you have any more positions about personnel groups, holler at me. All right. Toodles.